Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday Night Live. So we're going to be doing a little Q&A today, a little bit of some, I don't know, fun chat about dimensions, destiny, densities, timelines, realities, and all of that. Hello, everybody here on TikTok. We're excited to have TikTok back. We lost it for almost 24 hours, but then it was restored. Hi, everybody. Hello, welcome, welcome. Okay, so we're going to start with some questions that were submitted. Let me pull them up. And then any other questions you have, say them in the chat and we will get to that. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday Night Live. It's exciting to be back here again on another Tuesday. Have your questions. Okay. Okay, so the first question that was submitted through Instagram. So I'll start with my Instagram questions, but then put your questions in the chat. Oh, feels good to be back. What are your thoughts on the LA fires? I did a video on it last week and I live in LA. So I have a lot of stuff on that topic from my last week, Tuesday Night Live. Okay, so the first question. Oh, thanks, Sandra. Okay, so are there separate Earths for every possible timeline? If so, which dimensions or densities are they in? So first, let's start with the concept of dimensions versus densities, okay? So there's a lot of like intertwining between these because a lot of times people will use like 1D, 2D, 3D, 4D, and they use that for both, right? We use 4D for the fourth dimension, but then also we use 4D for the fourth density, right? So there is a lot of different interpretations of how people use these words. Sometimes people use them interchangeably, sometimes people use them in different ways. We're going to kind of go with like a general consensus of what this belief is. So a density is kind of like the level of experience and the level of lessons. This is why we sometimes hear people will say like minerals and rocks are 1D, animals are 2D, humans are 3D, aliens are 4D. And so we obviously know that rocks and humans and animals exist in the same dimension. So that's where stuff gets a little confusing, right? Because it's like, oh, how are rocks 1D and animals 2D when we're all in 3D, right? So when they're referring to it, they're using these things kind of interchangeably, but what it actually means is densities. And I don't usually use the word density that much, but that's what we mean when we're talking about density. So basically, the level of lessons and the level of experience is the density. So a rock, a mineral, a element, those are operating at level 1 density, which is their experiences. The experience that a rock is capable of having is different than the experience that an animal is capable of having, and then different than an experience which a human is capable of happening. But that's all within the same dimension, right? It's all within the third dimension. So when we're talking about densities, we're talking about the level of experience that they're able to, the lessons, the experiences that they're able to have. Now, dimensions get kind of used interchangeably, and the different dimensions 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D, all the way up. Some people say they're going 12D. Some people are like, I'm talking to the 100D aliens right now. Okay. So with dimensions, this is the perception of reality. So something at a 2D is perceiving reality in one way. 3D is perceiving reality in another way. 3D perceiving reality in another way. 5D perceiving reality in another way. Now, also, when we get into dimensions, you guys know I did the dimension series where I break this down in way better depth. Oh, hi, everybody. Hello. I'm excited to be back on TikTok, too. Excited we're all back. I'm glad we're all here. So when it also comes to dimensions, we're also talking about then scientific and mathematical dimensions. All of it is really saying the same thing. It's just different wording, different understanding of it. So, of course, we know, like in the most simple form, different dimensions like 1D is a dot, 2D is a line, 3D is, an object, a sphere, something like that. 4D would be like a tesseract, which is what we can't really understand because we live in the third dimension. So when it comes to these different concepts of dimensions, we know that there's many different things too, because people also use dimensions to talk about levels of consciousness. And that does line up because different levels of consciousness have different perceptions of reality. So something that is at a 2D level of consciousness is going to experience the world as we know to understand it flat compared to ours. Something that's at the 3D level of consciousness is going to experience it in a three-dimensional reality that we currently live in. We're also existing in the fourth dimension, and the fourth dimension is time. And so basically, um, the way that that works is like point A to point B, right? So let's say here's point A, here's point B. This is a physical reality at point A, and this is a physical reality at point B. The fourth dimension is how you get from one physical place to another physical place. The way that we perceive that is time. That's why we call time the fourth dimension. What is saying? Did I see you as the makeup model on Patty Dubruff's makeup tutorial? Yes, Georgina. I was in Patty's makeup tutorial. I was the Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen for the tutorial that's viral on TikTok. I know. I'm just there in the background, like I know. I know, it's so funny. Okay, so so with these dimensions where so then obviously then we have these other we have kind of spiritual idea of what these dimensions are. You know, we think we're living in 3D with a little bit in 4D, and then there's a fifth dimensional reality that exists, which is, you know, sometimes they say we're in the physical, the 4D is like non-physical, and then 5D is also non-physical. But a lot of the stuff when it comes to the spiritual things, they're kind of oversimplified to what's actually happening. You said you'd like to have me on your podcast to talk about it. DM me on Instagram, Michael. I would totally be down. But send me on Instagram because sometimes it's hard for me too. Or you can email me, projectjkultra@gmail. So, but you guys know, watch my dimension series because we go into every single model of dimensions possible. And that's on TikTok, that's on YouTube, the dimension series. Okay, so let's see some of the questions. What do I think of the egg? Okay, so the egg theory is what I think that you're asking about, right? So the egg theory is that we basically, it is the oneness. The egg is the oneness, that there is only one person, one observer. And the egg theory is that, okay, you incarnate into this life. In this life, I'm Jen. I'm JK Ultra. But then in my next life, I will go back and be every other person and interact with myself in every lifetime. I will go to the past, to the future, and that there's only one person going through the experience, which is basically the concept of oneness. The egg UAP, I have not been watching the news. What is the egg UAP? If you have a 3D egg, does that mean you have 36 eggs, 3 dozen, or is that egg chicken inside? Can we talk about that? I don't understand the question, but let's talk about the chicken and egg thing, right? Because is that what you're asking? So the chicken versus the egg, right? What came first? Was it the chicken or was it the egg? Okay, well, it's kind of the same question of if I have a seed that's going to grow a tree, is the whole tree inside? Because obviously the seed has the ability of the whole tree, but it's just the seed. So what exists first? The tree lets the seeds fall off. That's how we get the seeds, and then we plant them, and that's how we get the tree. But then that's how we get the seed. And so this is the concept of the universe, right? Because the universe is everything and nothing at the same time. And this goes back to the holographic model of the universe, that every single morsel, speckle, atom, quantum particle has the entirety within it. So, you know, it's like that in literature where they say the entire world within a grain of sand. That's what's happening with the chicken and egg situation. So, like, the same thing as a seed, right? Like, the seed has the whole tree inside of it, but then you need the tree to get the seed. And this is the paradox of our reality because we're living in a dualistic universe. So there's always going to be the two truths that are both true, that they will cancel each other out in the divine dichotomy. So is gravity and electromagnetism in the fifth dimension? I don't know. I hear a lot of things about the fifth dimension. 5D is a mirror of the 3D. That's possible. I hear a lot of stuff about the 5D. Of course, it's harder for us to know because we're only receiving that stuff from channeled messages at this point. So, and as we know, channeled messages are going through the filter of the person. So we're seeing this message, but I think over time, as consciousness is raising, we're going to have greater understanding of what the fifth dimension actually could be. Like we have a bit of a knowingness of it and we have some information around it, but like the saying, the more I learn, the less I know. So the more that I continue to learn about this stuff, I become less certain in the idea of what actually is the fifth dimension. Whereas, when I first listened to like the Pleiadian channeled stuff, I really felt like I understood what the fifth dimension is. But I think now, probably not. And I think also what we're seeing with the fifth dimension is that most likely it's many different timelines existing at once and many different possibilities at once. So let's go back to the question that was originally submitted through Instagram, and then I'll get back more to these questions because she had a second part to her question. Are there separate Earths for every possible timeline? Okay, so the are there separate Earths for every possible timeline is almost the oversimplification of what's happening, right? That implies that this is 100% a physical reality and that all of these other physical realities exist. But really, what's happening is this is a holographic universe, and we're seeing a projection of what our reality is. So all of them exist. All of the densities, all of the dimensions, all of the different timelines all exist in the same place. Actually, all the different planets exist in the same place as well. So this, like when we get these oversimplifications, because we try to understand it in our terms, this is where it comes up with the flat earth stuff, right? I made it very clear that I'm not a believer in flat earth. However, I'm not telling you it's definitely a sphere either. I don't know. I haven't seen it. So, but what we do know, right, is that, and I'll bring up a picture of the Vedic cosmology so we have like a better understanding, which the Vedics understood this 5,000 years ago. They already figured it out. Everything that we're now learning in quantum physics, they've already known. But so we know every single little particle that exists is, we're perceiving it, it's acting in a certain way where the observer is viewing it. But that same particle is being used by another observer of another reality, and we can't perceive that. So when we come back to the dimensions, it's really like we're using terms 3D, 4D, 5D. There is no real numbers of these dimensions. These are just ways for us to help us understand some markers, some points of reference. But there is no 3D, there is no 4D, there is no 5D. These are arbitrary titles that we're giving to something as a way to try to put it into our language, into our understanding. So coming back to this original question is there separate Earths? It's all the same Earth. Even, and then we get really like brain bendy here and say, okay, is the Pleiades here? Is Arcturus here? Is Orion here? Is all of these different things, are they all here? And this is where we get to the oversimplification of the flat earth stuff, where people talk about that there's a flat earth and then there's an ice wall. And then around the ice wall is all of these other earths or other lands, right? I'm not a believer in that, because what we're doing is we're taking this high dimensional concept and shrinking it down to the second dimension, shrinking it down to 2D. And the reason that I don't believe in the flat earth stuff is because the awareness of humanity when they believed that the world was flat was lower. They didn't know anything outside of their community. They didn't know anything outside of their country. They didn't know of other places. So the awareness and the consciousness of each person was very limited. And they were seeing the world in a limited two-dimensional view. as consciousness became aware of other ways of living, of other places, whether the Christopher Columbus story is the truth or not, or what is the right and wrong of it, that's besides the point. But as the example of what is given in history is that when Christopher Columbus discovered that there was another life, another way, another people, another place, another thing that was outside of their awareness, that's when the collective shifted to the concept of the earth being three-dimensional. And now we are so certain that it's three-dimensional that we're actually limiting ourselves again. So now as we become aware of, oh, there might be aliens in the fourth dimension or fifth dimension, and there might be other ways of life that are outside of our existence, out of our community, out of our way of understanding, something beyond that, the earth shape might not be a three-dimensional object. It might be then a fourth or fifth dimensional object, because that's our level of understanding. And that comes back to the definition of dimensions, which is our perception of reality, right? So when people are like saying like, oh God, the flat earth people are so stupid, it's obviously a globe. I'm like, but you're also saying the same thing, right? From our level of awareness, of course it's a globe. But if we raise our awareness of what's out there, and this is why I'm going to show you guys, I can't show you on TikTok. So if you want, come over to Instagram. I mean, YouTube. Share. Share the screen. Sorry. Okay. The Vedic Cosmology. Let's put it to the whole screen. Okay. So Vedic Cosmology. So you see what we're seeing here, guys, is this. Now, I am not a master of this. I would love to understand what the Vedics understood, but I need a teacher. I need the way that I break down stuff. I need someone to break it down for me. So, okay. So you see this. This is what they would call the earth sphere, right? Maybe not what they call, but what we're calling the earth sphere. And it's showing that there's a sphere-like shape, but that there's different levels within it, and that they're stacked on top of each other. So like in the middle here is like the earth realm where people live. And then in higher realms, there's where other beings live. And in the lower realms, other beings live. So we also saw this in a lot of different beliefs where they would have kind of more heaven and hell realms, or many different religions talk about 7 layers up and 7 layers down. This concept has come up a lot. So yeah, it looks like a sphere because they're all stacked upon each other. But is it actually a sphere? Of course, we're going to see. What's this one called? Look up Vedic Cosmology drawing, Vedic Cosmology drawing. And a lot of times people will use this image to prove flat earth. But what's actually, the reason they're stacking it upon each other is because how else do you draw dimensions, right? How do you draw that? Especially 5,000 years ago. So it's again an oversimplification of what people are seeing. So what I think, are there different realities? Are there different worlds? Is everything here? So is this potentially Earth? What if this is like, the Pleiades? This is Arcturus. This is, I don't know, some other place, And then what if this down here is, I don't know, where Greys live or something, right? So it could be that case. Now, most likely, I believe that these lower dimensions are sometimes what we would call inner earth beings, which was, again, making sense. Someone said in the comments, a toroidal shape. So this is where, let me see if I have the drawing. I'll hold it up to the screen. Let me come back to you guys. Hello. Okay, so this drawing, this is going to come back to the seed concept. Let me find the page. I should have put a bookmark in it. Sorry, I'm flipping. I'm getting it. Okay, here's one of the pictures. That's okay. Okay, so this book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum, talks about it. And you see this here. This here. Let me hold it up to the screen. This is the drawing that you guys see in a lot of those declassified CIA documents. So they're from this book. It's not actually from the CIA. It's from these documents. Okay, so you see here what it's showing us. This is almost like a seed. So someone's saying the toroidal shape. I agree. And there's a black hole that then goes into a white hole, comes out of another dimension. It goes through this whole process and then comes through again. We see a black hole go into the white hole and then comes out the other side, and it's time going in this direction. So, oh yeah, can we see on TikTok here? Okay, so see, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a black hole goes into the white hole and then comes out the other side. This is the reality kind of coming out. And then so you leave, that's old reality, new reality, old reality, new reality. And then we have it down here with time. So it's like the end of time, the beginning of time, the end of time, the beginning of time. So this is kind of where this toroidal shape is being shown. And of course, this is like an oversimplification because we can't even begin to fathom or understand. Oh, here we go too. So this is another one I'll show you guys. Like, so this also, you see, you go into the black hole, you come out of the white hole in a new universe. Now, okay, what are we seeing there? The infinity symbol, right? Right. Sunny, who taught you this? Your boyfriend? What are you talking about, Sunny? Do you think it's impossible for me to read a book myself? Okay. So this is the infinity symbol. So basically, the infinity symbol is what we're seeing, right? So it looks like cell division. Sunny doesn't even go here. You're right, Aubrey. He doesn't even go here. So you see this. This is why infinity is doing that. Is infinity a flattened version of the universe, right? And you guys know when I've gone into such great depth about the ayahuasca experience, but when I saw there was nothing, and then boom, big bang, everything expanding. We get to like the maximum point, like I said, it's God's breath, all the way up, hold it at the top for a moment, and then it gets sucked back in. That's what that's showing of that black hole, white hole, of that matter coming out one way, time coming out the other way. Is this, if it was flattened, an infinity symbol? Right? Okay. A disc, if you will. You're right. Okay. So I have some other questions from which were submitted, but looks like a brain. Wow. Yeah, you're right. So also too but this is what the holographic reality is, right? So the holographic reality is every single molecule, what we would call molecule. Obviously, there's quantum particles and things smaller. So every single tiny particle has the entirety of the whole within it. This comes back to the chicken and the egg. This comes back to the seed and the tree. The entirety of everything is contained. This is what we see in the universe. It's like a seed. Let's see if I have it on this page. Right? Because it has the whole. No, yeah. I'm not going to find that one. I'm just happy I found the first one. Okay. So it is like that's what's happening with the seed. Is so a seed has a holographic image of the entire tree within it. And then the tree grows and creates another seed. That's what's happening with this image of this white hole, black hole, of this infinity symbol, of this toroidal shape. A toroidal shape is a 3D version of an infinity symbol. Then again, like what we went back to is that what about when we raise our awareness? What does that look like? Is that a fourth dimensional object? So an infinity is a 2-dimensional object. A torus, a toroidal shape, is a 3-dimensional object. What is the fourth dimensional object? As far as we know, the only fourth dimensional object that we're like very aware of in society is a tesseract, right? So a tesseract is 2D would be a square, 3D would be a cube, 4D would be a tesseract. So a square has 4 equal corners or 4 equal line sides. A cube has 4 equal corners, 4 equal sides of that. Now, the tesseract is if every side of the cube had another cube on it and that they were all equal. you know? And then who knows? So what is the fifth dimension? A lot of people say they know what the fifth dimension is. I'm not going to be that cocky, although I'd love to be. Let's see. You definitely believe that, especially when you have big decisions to make in your life and there are two more paths to take. Yeah, and exactly. Let's talk about this with decisions in life, okay? As above, so below. Exactly, Anya. Since ayahuasca, do you see geometric patterns more often? Um, so you're saying, but a cube blocks and traps energy. I don't know if that's true. Does it? Blocks or traps is the filter that you're putting it through. A container, is a container something negative? Is a container something bad? It contains, it holds within, right? You know, we have all this water without a container. We don't get to use that water, really. We don't get to take that water with us. So a container doesn't need to be something negative. We are contained in a lot of cubes, if you think of it. I mean, especially in the third dimension, right? We keep building all these buildings and these rooms and these houses as cubes. I mean, can we be a little more creative? Okay. Did I watch the OA? I haven't watched it. People keep telling me to watch it. So let's say our neighborhood could be a dimension, be here, but just not in our sight. Because your daughter used to visit her sisters when she was small. I thought she was just astral projecting. Where are her sisters? Were they born yet, Shauna? Right. The thought experiment. Exactly. Storage. You're right. The placenta looks like the tree of life when it's stretched out. Yeah. So this comes back to the holographic reality, right? The whole is within every single tiny portion of it. And that goes again to the as above, so below. Oh, yeah. Your question about the ayahuasca. Do I see more geometric patterns? No, I would not say that it's more. But when I was younger, um, every single night I saw geometric patterns when I was going to sleep. And I didn't understand really what they were until then I did like psychedelics as an adult. And I would always be like, yeah, like when you're going to sleep and the shapes come, and people are like, what do you mean when the shapes come? I'm like, when the shapes come. And they're like, what are you talking about when the shapes come? I'm like, yeah, when you're falling asleep and all the shapes come. And so I, later, after doing psychedelics, you said, yes, the shapes. Yeah, some people see the shapes when they're falling asleep. And so I saw that as a kid, and then I didn't see it throughout my 20s. And then I started to see them again um, as I got deeper into meditation and deeper into consciousness. But then after doing plant medicine, I realized like, oh, that's kind of what happens with like DMT, right? So like we naturally have DMT in our brains. So is that what's happening with the shapes coming up the middle eye? You see shapes, colored numbers, you see the shapes. Wow, look at all you guys. We're seeing the shapes. Right. You're saying there's 91 people watching. Now 94 people watching, but only 29 likes, guys. Can you talk more about the decisions of as above, so below? Yes, thank you for bringing me back. Thank you for helping me land the plane here. Okay, so when we're talking about decisions, okay, so now this comes to the alternate realities, alternate things, right? Timelines, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so let's say, I like to use the example that Marina Jacobi uses because it's just very right, very simple, easy. So this example comes from Marina Jacobi where we talk about timelines. So let's say you have a friend that you want to hang out with, or they want to hang out with you. And so they say, hey, I would love to see you. I'm going to a nightclub tonight and I would love to see you. Can you come? And you're like, now, whenever you put conscious effort towards any thought, you create that reality in the quantum. However, in the third dimension, we're only able to perceive one timeline, one reality at a time. So, okay, hey, I'm going to a club tonight. Do you want to come with me? You have given thought to several realities. One of these realities is, hell no, I don't want to go to no nightclub. So I'm not going to see you. The other reality is, I don't want to go to a nightclub, but I really want to see you. So I guess I'll say yes, even though I don't really want to. Or then we have this third option, which is, I don't want to go to a nightclub, but I really want to see you. Can we plan something in a different setting for later this week? And let's put that on the calendar instead. So these are 3 possibilities when you're presented with something. You said, "Oh my God, I've missed you." Aw, thanks. I know. Where have I been, you guys? I mean, where have I been? And so with these 3 realities getting, created because you've given the option of like, "Ooh, I want to see you, but I don't like a club, so no." "Oh, I would love to see you, but I don't like a club. Sure, I'll go anyway." 3, I wanna see you, but I don't like nightclubs, so how about we make plans and go to lunch in a couple days? 3 realities. You've created all 3 with your consciousness because in the quantum, it is creating. So now we have 3 timelines. Which timeline do you perceive? Which one do you live on? All of them exist. This is how I ended up quitting my job that I used to have, before doing this work. I got really deep into the timeline stuff, and then I was like, gosh, I really want to quit this job and do what I'd love to be doing. Oh, but if I quit this job, then I won't have any money. And then I realized I created both of these realities already. And there's a reality that I leave the job, and there's a reality that I stay in the job, and I can only perceive one. And I said, hell no. If both of these realities exist, I definitely want to see the one where I leave this job. I don't want to see the one that I also created where I stay at the job and I doubt myself. Okay, so now we use the example of so see, these all exist in the quantum. Now, this gets to kind of the topic of the non-player character stuff, right? So there's only one you're the main character in your story of life. So your main story, you can only perceive that video game. But then other people perceive the video game from their perspective and they're on their own quest. So you and another person can both be on the main player thing and you guys are both playing with each other in the reality and interacting. Now, when one person makes a conscious decision of they want to go to a different timeline, say they want to go to it. So, okay, let's use back to that same example. The friend who's asking you to go to the club, that friend, if you are on a timeline and you say, "No, I'd rather see you somewhere else in a couple days," and they say like, "Screw you, this is my birthday party. You're not coming to my birthday party. I'm not seeing you in a couple days." They might fractal to a different timeline than you over time when you're no longer on the same wavelength, when you're no longer vibrating on the same reality. You will go off to one reality and they're not going to poof out of your reality. That's not how it works. When you and another person make decisions that put you onto a different timeline, they don't just disintegrate into reality. What they do is they still perceive the reality the way they need to perceive it. So now you become your main player character and you say, "Oh, I'd love to see you. Let's go to lunch." In their reality that you're creating, they say, "Yes, I'm going to lunch with you." And then you're like, "Okay, we're great." Then you go and hang out. But if that person is not actually on that wavelength, you might start to distance and grow apart on different timelines. And then this other person might start to kind of come up almost as like an NPC version of themselves. And it's not that they don't have a soul, it's that their main character is on a different timeline. So basically, you start to see, like, oh, you know what? We just don't align anymore. We went to lunch and it just wasn't my vibe. And we start to distance and move further. Now, in their timeline, you say that thing, "Oh, I don't like the club. Can I go to lunch?" And they're like, "Ew, screw you. You're missing my nightclub birthday party. You don't care about me." And they start to distance from you. And you'll kind of become lessons in each other's timeline. And now, like, say you had an old friend, an old partner, and then you guys started vibrating on different wavelengths. You start to then go further apart from each other because the main players are further apart on different realities. However, you still exist within each other's world. So then you're like, you know what? She really just changed. She just, you know, is not like the same person anymore. We just don't really get along anymore. And then you start to, over time, live on further timelines. And then eventually you stop aligning, you stop communicating, you stop being in each other's lives, and you gently drift off of timelines. Now, let's talk about the earth stuff, right? Because someone asked changes in the world that we're in now. And another person asked, how can we navigate the changes with wisdom and unity with all the governance? Okay, so let's talk about the changes of the world. So the changes in the world are, let's talk about, I'm assuming they mean earth changes, right? Do you ever run into these people again though? Yes, you can, Drea, but they might be different. Like, say you bump into them and then they're kind of like, oh, damn, that person now is like, got 3 kids and moved out to the middle of nowhere. And I bumped into them at the grocery store the other day. And they become like a lesson, a story in your main video game that you're playing. So it doesn't mean that they cease to exist. You just become more distant. And then when they do pop up, it just pops up as like a reminder, a lesson, something that needs reflection. I will answer this question really quick, even though it's unrelated. What do you know about shadow people watching people while you sleep? There's a lot of different things with shadow people, but sometimes these shadow people are actually gatekeepers. And sometimes when people are seeing beings before they're going to sleep, it's actually like they're kind of drifting into, a lot of times people have more heightened psychic abilities. It will be drifting into kind of seeing into other realms, other dimensions, other whatever you want to call it. But if that's the case, these things are not always scary. Sometimes these things are almost like gatekeepers. And a gatekeeper is just, the person at the doorway, right? Sometimes they seem scary to us because they're unknown, they're cloaked in shadow, but actually they're a gatekeeper between passing us into another dimension, into another realm. And they're kind of like holding the space there. And then you see the shadow person and you're like, I'm scared now. And you're tapping out of going into that other dimension, and not physically going into the other dimension. You're perceiving with your third eye into the other dimension. You're still physically in this dimension. But this is also what happens when people smoke meth, right? When people smoke meth, why does everybody that smoke meth see shadow people? Because they're crossing into these lower densities. So, I know this is a tangent, but so meth, right, is speed. So if you do speed, your perception starts going at a faster frequency than reality. So you start to see into another level of reality because you're actually operating at a different frequency. And that's part of why it's called speed. You used to always see shadow people when you tweaked. Everybody does. So that's how you know this is real shit. How does everybody see the same exact thing? Same thing we do ayahuasca. How does everybody then meet Mother Aya? Like, how does everybody that does meth see the shadow people eventually? It's because they're like these gatekeepers to these other realms. As you start to slip into these other realms, it's because you saw the Hat Man, but you were sober. Yeah, it's mostly not drug related. I'm just using that as the example. But the Hat Man, Whitney here knows about this. Whitney helped me to understand this message. The old hag, right? People experience the old hag shadow person, the person who will sit on your chest while you're sleeping, and it's like a sleep paralysis demon. The Hat Man is like a sleep paralysis being. These things are actually gatekeepers to other realms. They actually are kind of like, oh, I got the restriction, you guys. It wouldn't be a Tuesday Night Live. Oh, I know. It's because I said meth. God, they're so quick with it. I got my restriction, my 2 restrictions. I wouldn't be a Tuesday Night Live without one. You've never done the goods, but you've seen shadow people since you were a kid, and now your kids see them. So there's a couple different reasons. Sometimes we're seeing shadow people because we're at a depression or addiction or sadness frequency, and that's opening up to this dimension. Another reason, doesn't need to be that at all. Sometimes you just have heightened psychic abilities, and those heightened psychic abilities are actually opening a door to these other dimensions that are more easy to access than higher ones. Lower dimensions are easier for us to access. So, and you can just access it in your regular state where it's not like you need to raise your vibration to be able to access them. So You saw shadow people as a kid and a young adult before your spiritual awakening. Yeah. So it's now during a QHHT session, I'm going to share it here. Hopefully, the person doesn't mind. I think we talked about me sharing this one day. Is about the old hag. And like I said, this is like a sleep paralysis demon that sits on people's chest. Thousands and thousands of people have marked the very same identity of this thing, seen the same thing, had the same experience. Thousands of people have talked about the same identical experience. What we found out in the QHHT asking about the old hag is that actually she is, again, a gatekeeper. I believe these beings are all gatekeepers to other realms. And she said that basically, if you have heightened psychic abilities, you're more likely to see things. And this old hag is almost a test. She comes and sits on your chest and sucks your energy because, one, if you are going to venture into these spiritual dimensions, you need to not be scared. And two, if you're going to venture into these spiritual dimensions, you need to know how to protect your energy and not get your energy sucked and drained by these beings. So she's actually a test, actually a teacher, actually a guide, but she looks like a scary demon woman. When you were up for 4 days straight, when you were on the stuff, you seen shadow people walking through trees. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. You're going because your frequency, when you're doing it on substances, your frequency has become so fast. I guess this still goes to the topic of dimensions, right? We just got a little haywire with it. But yeah, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about these dimensions. Okay, let's see what here is saying. Ever since you smoked, you passed out and met a wizard who showed you that life was a play and nothing mattered. Oh, that's beautiful. Which you probably then got to a higher frequency, which happens sometimes when you smoke. You got to a higher frequency and you were able to like meet one of these guardian gatekeepers who are at that frequency dimension. You told the dream people that you knew it was a dream once they got mad at you and you got stuck. Well, I just had a dream a couple days ago that when I would tell myself, okay, this is a dream, every time that I'm in a dream and I become aware of being in a dream, I actually think I'm not in a dream and I insist I'm not in a dream, and then I wake up. So that's what happened. That happened to me once before. My friend Yelena, who was just here on the live earlier, I don't know if she's still watching. I had a dream about her about like 6 months ago. And she's like, I just have this terrible feeling that I'm in a dream. I'm just so worried. I feel that all of this is a dream. And I'm like, well, if it's a dream, then wake up. I don't think it's a dream. And she's like, no, I have a really bad feeling that we're in a dream right now. And I'm like, then wake up. And she's like, yeah, but I don't know how. And I'm like, just wake up. And then I woke up and I was freaked out because then I was like, oh shit, the dream person was right. We were in a dream. You have a question. It's completely unrelated. Sorry, your sweet kitty passed. Yeah, I'll ask the question. You fought against sleep paralysis. What does it say about me? It means that you probably passed that level of being afraid of these dimensions and actually, your psychic abilities. That's like kind of like a training camp for the psychic abilities in a way. Now you're a very strong psychic medium after doing stuff. Okay. I mean, it works. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're not able to. You said when you get sleep paralysis, you see grays. Oh, yeah, for sure. That's the thing. The sleep paralysis is because your body is stuck because it's 3D and your consciousness is seeing into another dimension. So you're seeing into a higher dimension. That's why your body is stuck. You're seeing another realm. So you can't do both, right? You can't move around in the physical. I mean, maybe you could with like the help of certain things. But this is also why, yogis and meditators and gurus are completely still. That's how they're venturing into these realms, is because they're venturing into these other spaces. However, your body is in 3D. So you kind of need to let the body be completely still. So sometimes it's against our. Now, sometimes sleep paralysis is not any of these beings. Okay. I just want to make that clear. Sleep paralysis is not always this because everything has a spectrum of answers. Sometimes sleep paralysis is actually your own inner demons. Like you're kind of getting eaten up by your own stuff going on. So a lot of times people see this stuff when they're in addiction, when they're in depression, when they're in, you said, so the old hag is not a demon. The definition of a demon is debatable. There's a lot of different things that people say are demons. I believe this is a gatekeeper test. That is scary because are you ready to go into those other dimensions? That shit's scary. Let's see. Let me see. What's the unrelated question? I'm going to look for it. One time you woke up with a raccoon on your chest and you couldn't scream or help or move. Interesting. That's probably some type of dimensional thing. Like when I told you guys about this scary candle story, that's kind of what happened. How should you try to strengthen your psychic abilities? Use whatever tools seem right for you. Meditation is obviously the number one, but tarot cards are a great way. Depending whatever type of divination type of things that you like, that is going to anything that you're doing is strengthening your abilities. So if it is it should always be some level of meditation. But if you're going to use tarot, if you're going to use dowsing rods, if you're going to use a pendulum, any of those things, you also don't have to use anything physical. You can do a synchronicity test. Okay, I'm strengthening my abilities. I'm going to see a llama. Okay, maybe it's going to be a llama sticker on the back of a car. And you start to co-create and play with the universe in that way. There's many different ways for you to strengthen your abilities. Let's see. Shannon, your unrelated question. Let me find it. Okay, thank you so much. Your kitty passed away and you're wondering about free will versus destiny because you couldn't save him. It was during the Aries solar eclipse. Oh, I'm so sorry about your cat. So let's talk about animals, animal souls, and stuff like this. And this is going to reel us back in to kind of the densities, right? So we had the one density is like the minerals and elements and rocks and stuff. Second density, oh, your cat also just passed away. One of my best friends also just lost her cat last week. So it's crazy a lot of this is happening right now. Okay. So, okay, let me get my grounding of how I'm going to answer this. So we have level 1 soul, right? The 1D. 1D is the closest to source. Elements are closer to source in their experience. Rocks, elements, minerals, closer to source in their experience. The next level out would be stuff like animals, plants, and then animals. Okay. Plants have a different experience. Animals have the next experience. Like I said, the numbers are really arbitrary. The next level experience would be humans, then higher level humans who are operating at a higher level. So everything is one. There is only one giant soul in the universe. And then we have little fractals of that soul that overlap each other. And there's no beginning or end of any soul. It just merges, it feathers out, and that feathering comes from other people. So then one soul has many different cells, and that's what we are, right? But all the cells are touching each other. The cells are all this stuff. So plants also hive soul. So I believe that it goes based on like collective hives. So like oak trees, I believe are all connected to each other through their hive soul. All the daffodils are connected to each other from one hive soul. The next level of experience is then animals. Animals are hive souls. So basically, all cats, all dogs, all cows, all of those things are one hive soul. And before we go, I'm not saying that the animals don't have a soul. We're going to explain it a little bit more. And I even believe it comes down to like, say something like the breed. So like, I love German Shepherds. I feel connected with every German Shepherd. Almost every single time I meet a German Shepherd, it's immediately nice to me, likes me, opens up to me. And that's because I have already bonded on a deep personal level with that hive soul. This is why I say like cat people, a cat person, they kind of like get along with like all cats, right? And then especially certain types of cats, they really get along with. Oh, I really get along with black cats because you've already connected with this hive soul. Now, how does consciousness raise? Through awareness, through experience, and through unconditional love. So when we have an animal, a pet, we give it unconditional love more than we can even give a person unconditional love most of the time, right? We can love an animal more than we can even like easily love a person sometimes. And it's because they're so pure and they're actually closer to God. Each of these lower densities are closer to God. So, but their experiences are changing on these levels. So, when you have, say, for example, Shannon, your cat, or anyone who is talking about, you just lost your Pomeranian after 14 years. Oh, I'm sorry. Everyone's pets are transitioning, but there's good news. Okay. So when you give an animal unconditional love, you actually start to give it an individual experience. And when does something become an individual soul? When it says, I am. When God created when the Big Bang happened, God was like, I am light. And then the whole universe gets created because it became individual of an observer of a creator. When a soul becomes a human and be able to like have human experiences, it's I am this. And now you're discovering. It's like the book The Little Soul in the Sun. It's when he says, I know what I am, that's when he comes to fruition. So when we have pets and we start to give them an I am experience, now it's not just part of a hive soul. It's I'm Shannon's kitty. I'm this. My name is, Joe the cat. And now Joe the cat is like, I like that food. I don't like that food. I like this bed. I don't like this bed. You know what? I feel like peeing outside of the box today because I'm feeling a little sassy. And it starts to have an individual I am serious experience. And as this soul, hive soul, starts to have an individual experience, it starts to, like a little egg, come off of the hive and starts to burst into I am. So as we have these animals for 10 years, some cats up to 20 years old, we're having these animals for so many years and they're getting this more individual I am experience and they start to become more individual, they actually will become an individual soul that is no longer part of the collective hive. Or obviously, we're all part of the collective. But then it starts to be, like I said, how like God is one soul and we're all fractals of that soul we have our area that kind of feathers out into others. They start to become their own new soul. And then they're like, I am. And then they're ready to have their own individual experience. And so, all of you guys who have given your pets unconditional love, you can trust that when that animal passes, you've given them the greatest gift ever within consciousness. Not just the beautiful things that you did in this world to help them, to give them the best life ever and the best food ever and the most comfy bed and all the stuff they like and their favorite treats and doing everything for them. You gave them a great experience in this 3D realm. But the gift that you actually gave them is a million times beyond that, because what you're actually doing is you're allowing them to become an I am. And now in their next life, they have the opportunity to choose a life and to say, you know what? I'm ready to be a little boy and I'm ready to choose an experience. I'm ready to be a little girl. I'm ready to be a human now. And this is how, because the same thing happens as above, so below, right? So when we interact with higher dimensional beings, let's say you channeled Pleiadians, now it allows you to go to the next level of consciousness because they gave you that knowledge, that unconditional love. They raised your awareness of what experience was possible. And now you're going to the next level. So then you get to move on. So we see this as above, so below happening. So these higher dimensional beings, angels, aliens, this, that, whatever you want to call them, they're giving us a little taste of their experience, a little taste of their unconditional love, and it allows us to ascend. But we're doing that for animal souls. We're doing that for plants. We're allowing them to become individualized. Can they incarnate as our children? I've heard mixed things about this. People do say it's possible, especially now because the animals have become so aware. It's not like before where like it would slightly become aware. These animals have become so evolved in these lifetimes because we're treating them like children. We're treating them like people. We're treating them really individual. So I do believe that they can incarnate next as a person. Now, they might be able to be a person in their next life, Or they can also maybe be a guardian. There is also like guardian angels that are animals. Sometimes those animals will watch over your children. You know, my friend, she had her dog and he was not doing well. He was on his way out, but she was pregnant. And he really like stayed until she came home from the hospital. He died the day after she came home from the hospital with the baby. And it was like that was like her first child. Then she had her child. Her dog transitioned and he was really holding on. Like I saw her when she was 8 months pregnant and every time I looked at the dog I started crying. And I was like, "Jen, please." I was like, "He's not okay." And she had to get through her pregnancy. So she was actually a little blind to the fact that sorry, TikTok's freezing. She was a little blind to the fact that like he was on his way out because she needed to do what she needed to do in survival for her baby and needed not to have the trauma of that at that moment. The dog passed one day after she came home from the hospital or 2 days after she came home from the hospital. But it was like he stayed with her until she had her next baby, her real first human baby. And then now her son, who didn't know him, never met the dog, will say the dog's name and like point. So it's like, is that dog like a guardian right now for her child and for her family? And because he's a baby and he's only 2 years old, he kind of like points and like says the dog's name. Our new girl dog, the exact same mannerisms. I've recently passed away girl dog. I swear it's the dog. I do believe that that's possible. I do believe that an animal can incarnate into another animal, into the same family, because now it has an I am experience. It gets to choose what it wants to do as a soul. And maybe what it chooses is to be a dog again and to be you again and with you again. So I do think this is also why we have to give unconditional love to plants, to animals, and to people, right? Because then we help people operate at a higher level. They operate at an expanded level. Let's see. Let me see what other questions are here. Okay. Jen, do you consider yourself to be friendly with the beings we know as grays? I would love to become friendly with them. Oh, I mean, I feel very friendly with them. I love the grays. I think I should do another video maybe next week. We'll see what comes up about grays. We'll see what that is, and I'll do a whole thing about that. Let me just see if there's any other question that was submitted. Oh, soul contracts with animals. Perfect wrap to this topic. So, soul contracts with animals, we do. So, sometimes they are contracted to be in our life. Sometimes they're contracted to be almost like a guardian for us. And I do believe that we have soul contracts with animals. Now, it is different so the other side, obviously, this world, we can call the word simulation because it's an easy word for us to understand what is happening. It's holographic reality. So outside of this holographic reality, this video game, whatever you want to call it, there's a game within a game, right? We're inside the game within the game. The game that's outside of this game is the other side. So you said, are you saying that your friend's child saw the dog in the room? Well, he's only 2 years old, so we don't know. But that's what it seems like because he keeps saying the dog's name and pointing as if the dog is there. So I do believe it because that was like her child, that dog. And that he stayed until the day after the baby was born. So I do believe that her child sees the dog as like almost like a guardian angel. And because he's a baby, the veil is so thin. The babies can see more than we can. They say up until age 7, you can see through the veil. Oh, you're welcome, Shannon. Haley, you're late. Oh, we're not going to go over today. I'm going to stop at the hour. So we have a couple more minutes. You said, oh, yes, he was teaching me unconditional love too. His name was Mr. Lucky, and I think he's my angel now. I think he was holding on as long as he could. So that's free will, I suppose. Yeah, I do believe that, they have a service as well, right? Our animals, they know what they're signing up for also. Even to go a little further, there are collective contracts. I do believe that dogs, the spirit, the energy of dogs, the hive soul of dogs, and pets and all of these things, but specifically dogs, specifically cats, have a collective contract with humans, with humanity. And that there's a reason why we say dogs are man's best friend, right? They have a soul contract, I believe. That large soul, that hive soul of dogs has a collective contract with all of humanity to be man's best friend, to be the teacher of unconditional love. They also say that's why they live less time. All of us, right, are trying to figure out unconditional love. That's kind of like the purpose of coming into this game and having this experience, right? So that we can understand unconditional love. Animals don't need that long, right? Animals can do it in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and then they can hold on even longer to stay with you because they're still teaching you unconditional love. And they might stay 15 years. They might stay 20 years if you're lucky. So they are part of those lessons. So I believe that there's collective contracts. Now, not to be bleak, but we're on the topic and we got to say what we got to say, which is, what about the animals that we eat, like cows? And you guys know cows are my favorite animal. So cows, for example, probably have a collective contract with humanity. Buffalo had a collective contract with humanity. Chickens, animals that we use for food, for sustenance, do have a collective contract with humanity. Now, their collective contract is not, to be tortured. It's to give us substance. It's to give us, it's to give us what we need in order to have our lessons, our mission. We get to have this space, you know? But now we do have lessons and stuff with them. What about insects? Oh, hell yeah, insects. I love insects. They're like my favorite. So they have a collective mission. What about flies? What about cockroaches? Somebody's got to eat the shit. Somebody's got to clean it up. Somebody's got to do it. So basically, and snakes and fish, all of them, because it's an ecosystem, right? Because as above, so below. We have a physical ecosystem, and then we have a non-physical ecosystem as well. And people forget that. And this is what I know. We'll get to the crazy stuff now, and then we'll finish up. But like the reptilian stuff. All right. A lot of people. Yes, Meg, you know where I'm going, Meg. So like the reptilian stuff, like the demon stuff, things that are sucking on energy, feeders, bottom feeders. In the physical, we have bottom feeders, right? Cockroaches and the flies make it all go round. In the ocean, the shrimp and the other shellfish, they're the bottom feeders. That's why I don't eat them. All right. But these bottom feeders make the ecosystem continue. Now, who's to say as above, so below? There's obviously an energetic, non-physical ecosystem. So a lot of people will see these animals, or not animals, beings like reptilians, etc., who allegedly feed on our negativity, who allegedly feed on loosh, as they would call it. Why is that a bad thing? Right? Why is that a bad thing? Is it evil for a fly or a cockroach? Is it evil for a shrimp? So why is it evil on the energetic level? What happens if there's no flies or cockroaches? Well, then the shit in the garbage piles up. What if there's no maggots? Then nothing decomposes and becomes life again, the creation and destruction cycle. What happens in the ocean if there's no bottom feeders? Well, the whole entire ocean will be fish shit, right? So what happens in our world if we have nothing doing that as above? Right? We understand when it's happening below because we understand those other things. But what about when it's happening higher? Is this actually a cycle that needs to happen? What would happen with all of that negative energy if nobody was feeding on it? But it's going through the filter. So we had, like, originally Robert Monroe had seen this. It went through Robert Monroe's filter. We have a lot of people who are channeling stuff about reptilians. It's going through their filter. So in their filter, they're saying, oh my God, they're so freaking evil. They eat our sadness. They eat our suffering. They eat our fear. And it's like, well, then where does it go otherwise? If energy is not created or destroyed, then where does it go? There needs to be some type of ecosystem happening. And like Meg said, everybody eats. Are we evil for eating cows? Some people believe that. Other people believe that it's nature, that it's an ecosystem. That food chain is part of an ecosystem. Sammy says, I really needed this live tonight. Thank you. You're taking a break from world events and doom scrolling to connect with your spirit, and this helped you start your day. Oh, beautiful, Sammy. Yeah, you're right. 98 watching and listening, but only 64 likes. Yeah, the ecosystem would collapse. Exactly. You're right. Shrimps can be evil. Have you ever met a pistol shrimp? Pure evil. I don't want to meet a pistol shrimp. You know, kind of like, I hope I never do. Okay, let me see if there's any other single questions here, and then we will wrap up if there's any like questions that are related to the topic. Okay, so maybe we'll talk about grays next week. Is that what you guys want to do? Everybody has a lot of questions about the grays. Meg, we can raise an agency to create different emotions and not be pushed around or manipulated to produce negative emotions, right? Right. And who knows if we go to the bigger level, God, source, the oneness, does want to experience the negative emotions, right? Because that's how it learns about itself. That's how it has all the experiences. Don't get you started on mosquitoes. Exactly. I'd like to know, Operation Big Buzz, right? Operation Big Buzz, when the CIA released 500,000 mosquitoes in Florida in the 50s. Probably the reason why it's so bad. But then they started doing it again over the last years where they genetically modify them and they're legally allowed to release them in certain states like California. So that's what I am wondering about. They're genetically modifying these mosquitoes. These mosquitoes are feeding on us, which is fine. Okay, there's an ecosystem. But then there's things that can get passed around from mosquitoes. Obviously, we know viruses and stuff, but actually, they take a little bit of DNA from each person and inject the DNA to another person. Is this a good thing to do? Probably when it's happening naturally, it is. Maybe, we know about mosquitoes being responsible for diseases. What about if mosquitoes all of these years have been also maybe moving antibodies or, some immunities from person to person that is in different people's DNA? That could be something that's happening too. But what about these genetically modified ones? What are they really doing with this? What are they really doing with these mosquitoes that are getting genetically modified? Okay, so let's see. Can you hear more about the early spiritual awakening LA days? I'll talk about that. I do have videos about that on my YouTube. You've been seeing 1111 and 111 and collecting crystals. It's just confirmation from the universe. Um, okay, guys, I think that's what we're going to do. Totally. That's why I put it in quotes. We're here to be and see all that is possible. You're so right, Meg. Grays next week would be good. Charlie's curious about them too. Yeah, everybody wants to know about the grays. Okay, so we'll do grays next week because that'll be really fun. Okay, guys, thank you for coming to the Tuesday Night Live. I love you, and we're all looking forward now to grays next week. Okay, now I'm excited for this. I'm going to go through my hypnosis sessions and jot down all of the notes about the grays because I know that was long. It was like 4 parts. Okay, guys, see you next Tuesday. Thanks so much.